This is the Messiah Hour with Ari Louis.
Welcome, everybody, to today's episode of the Messiah Hour here on IsraelSportsAndNewsRadio.com. Thank you for joining us. At any time, feel free to send us an email to messiahhour@gmail.com, or you can email the station at IsraelSportsAndNewsRadio@gmail.com. Does the Galut apply to sports? On the line to discuss this, our rabbi from Tzfat, originally from Ohio, which may play a part in discussing the NBA Finals, Rabbi David Katz. He's also the co-author of the book, The World of the Ger. Rabbi, how you doing out there?
Hey, Ari, thanks for having me back. This should be quite a fun discourse on today's show.
Yes, indeed. So a lot of the sports pundits are still wrapping up the NBA Finals. The Cavaliers lose in 6 games to the Golden State Warriors. LeBron James gets some of the blame. And I don't know if that's necessarily fair or not, but from a Galut perspective or a Gula perspective, if he didn't achieve that point, what is your take on the NBA Finals?
The NBA Finals this year, look, the ratings, they say, were some of the best they've ever had, right? We saw great finals. To me, I mean, I like watching, whether it be the Super Bowl or the finals of the NBA. World Series, not anymore so much. Is hockey even a sport? I'm not sure it's a sport.
It's maybe running 5th or 6th place in the United States if they're lucky.
Yeah, cricket, I think, gets better ratings, right?
I'm not going to go that far. We're not going to go that bad. But the lockouts really killed the NHL, and they're still suffering for it, even though it was about 10 years ago.
That happened with synchronized swimming, too, a couple years back, I remember. They had a big lockout in synchronized swimming.
See, they must have, because I don't even know what you're talking about.
Of course, I'm partial and biased towards NCAA and Olympic wrestling. But that's my issue. But again, this year it was interesting. A lot of things came into focus this year that didn't apply to me in years past. Number one, my kids watch their TV shows, cartoons and stuff on TV. And when my mother comes to visit, we have a TV in the living room for her. I've actually never turned it on outside of the Super Bowl when the Pats played. Who they play? The Seahawks. That was the first time I watched it. Yeah, that was the first time I watched it. The second time was when I turned it on for the finals, and it was convenient because it came on really either you can call it late at night, early in the morning, depending on what side of the alarm clock you're on. And I had fun, ended the nights learning and working, pulled up a stender in front of the TV, had a sefer at the stender, was learning the Vilna Gaon with the Cavs game going on in the background. And again, part of my my desire to do this year was not simply the finals. I don't know if I would have done it in a traditional finals, but I can remember being a Clevelander. Before I came to Israel, I was in Cleveland. I remember I was a young guy working at the Jewish Community Center at the Arabica Kosher Coffee House in the lobby. The pre-Rabbi Katz days. And the Plain Dealer was obviously the newspaper we had on the tables in the cafe. And there was a big article in the sports section. Of course, back then I'm reading the sports section every morning, along with my Dvar Torah that would come in the fax machine those days. And there was a big two-page ad, not so much an ad, but a display of a young kid, 16 years old. He had a big afro, and his name was LeBron James. And they were billing this kid to be the next big superstar. They were saying he's won 2, Mr. Ohio awards at that time, 2 state championships. And he was going to be a junior. Big news back then. And I remember even that holiday season, before I left for Israel that summer, the basketball kids always play those, the AAU tournaments. And I remember noticing this LeBron James kid, that every team he was on was a winner. Usually the good kid from your neighborhood or district doesn't translate to, the epic levels of the country usually. Your star player doesn't usually become the guy. In this case, everything I saw LeBron James doing was gold. And I'm saying, hey, that's this guy from Akron, which, by the way, Steph Curry's from Akron, too. Just a little Wikipedia file information. And as I got to Israel, a couple months later, There were articles that he was on the cover of Sports Illustrated. He was the chosen one. All this stuff. So it was interesting following what for me was just a newspaper article. And then he was the first pick in the draft. Went to Cleveland. I mean, how fitting was that? Hometown hero. And then we had the rise and fall of LeBron James through the Miami Heat and the decision, which most people were kind of disgusted with. And what was interesting, just giving my personal background here, what got me really interested in LeBron James, from a Torah angle, he said that his lifetime influences were the Schottensteins. Now, if you know the
That's
Schottenstein...
right. Yeah, I just want to clarify real quick. He was asked who was the most influential person in the 20th century. LeBron James said Schottenstein because he made the Talmud accessible to the masses. Just want to throw that in there. Go ahead, Rabbi.
Yeah, and so we're seeing this Jewish story come alive, and then he's getting eights, from Pinto, one of the shyster Mekubalim of the Abukatsera dynasty. Everyone's followed that story, and he's getting Kabbalistic insights from Rav Pinto, and at that time it was like Madonna and the Kabbalah Center and all kind of stuff where Jews were becoming cool into the Hollywood world. I guess you could kind of put LeBron in Hollywood as far as that's concerned. And again, so now we know that he's with Jews. And Cleveland, I don't know if everybody from the country in America realizes how great Cleveland's Jewish community is. It's a really nice community. Certain communities have a certain charm. Obviously, Miami, New York, LA doesn't need to be mentioned, in Chicago. But the smaller communities, Baltimore, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Dayton, Ohio has about 3 Jews. Phoenix has some Jews, right, Ari?
Phoenix has actually 150,000. They're just all spread out.
Yeah, there's a lot of Jews. I knew that. There's also Vegas, where my mother's from. There's a lot of Jews there. So there's a lot of communities all around that are secret little Jewish spots that are quite interesting. In Cleveland, was from there, and before I came to Israel, it's a great community. So as this was growing, the LeBron and Jews and all these things, by this season, before LeBron commits to the Cavs, David Blatt, like a blot of Gomorrah, becomes the coach of the Cavs, which the locals here know that he did good with the Israeli team in basketball. And once about a week or however many weeks later, they get LeBron on board, big, whatever, because he had a big falling out with the owner over the decision when he went to Miami. So the Jewish plot thickens. I mean, it really thickens. He's playing for a Yid, like a guy who really looks and acts like a Yid from Israel and all these things. And it was a great storyline going into the season. And he, had a great supporting cast at the end. And here we are at the finals, in the middle of June, or beginning of June. We're in the finals. LeBron gets there. His team's beat up. It's only him. He lost his entire supporting cast to injury. And a great intrigue on the other side of the ball. The Warriors have one of the best records of all time coming in. Really amazing team. And for any Bulls fans in the 90s, we all were. Steve Kerr, triggers memories of our youth with Michael Jordan's teams. The head coach of the Warriors. So it was worth watching. And Bibi Netanyahu gives a speech, to LeBron. All of Israel's behind you. And it was definitely going to be a series worth watching. How involved were the Jews going to get and what was going to happen? I mean, a lot of times the non-Jewish athletes, when they win, they say, thank God for Yashka. I was thinking, how great would it be if LeBron won and he said, Baruch Hashem? That would just
could have happened.
That would take. So my point is, I watched the finals, and they did lose in 6 games, but we saw a lot of incredible things. Again, my intrigue was from all these different angles of personal interest. So many storylines on both sides with the Warriors and the Cavs. It was a tremendous series. To me, it just tells you what kind of times that we're in. Because that kind of storyline, very easily you could be blinded to it if you didn't know the facts. But if you saw the facts, a 3-dimensional world pops up, and I think unrivaled, at least since the Bulls maybe, or I don't know. I mean, the Bulls were pretty great with Michael Jordan, but the teams of the past kind of were very workmanlike, and this one had a lot of character and charm. So with that, it was well worth watching the series.
All right, again, this is the Messiah Hour here on IsraelSportsandNewsRadio.com. My guest is Rabbi David Katz, and we're talking about Geula from the sports perspective. What would you like to see happen? Because there's this talk about David Blatt, if he should come back or not come back. What would you like to see LeBron James do, or who would you like to have him serve as coach? I guess, or the way I should say is, who would you like to be the next coach of the Cleveland Cavaliers?
See, this is where the discussions come in. There's so much to discuss. I think the discussions are better than the games, of all what happened. And I was, a lot of times when I retire at the end of the day, and I had to, sit down and cook dinner, I'll put YouTube on my iPad in the kitchen, and because I can't really concentrate on content so much when I'm cooking, I'll put on, sports on YouTube just to highlights or just to occupy the time while I grab a bite to eat. And one of the things that caught my eye was a famous machlokas, if you want to call it that, an argument show between Skip Bayless and Stephen A. Smith on ESPN. When I find them rather loathsome, the way they go back and forth, and I never know if it's planned or if it's real. Something tells me it could be real. I don't know. Maybe it's just drama. I don't know. But Stephen A. Smith wanted to say that the reason why the Cavs lost was because the supporting cast was hurt. And I want to believe that as a Clevelander. I want to think that if they had their team, they would have demolished the Warriors. And Skip Bayless wants to say that we embraced LeBron's hurt team, but despite the injuries, we wanted to see LeBron go epic. So epic that would make Michael Jordan look like a dwarf. That's what everyone's looking for. We always want to one-up the previous generational great. And suffice it to say, LeBron fell short. The team was injured. He did rise to epic proportion, mind you, in minutes played and statistics, but we basically wanted to see a miracle. There's a famous line from the great wrestling movie Vision Quest, where the star character is getting ready for the final wrestling match, where he does have this epic victory in the movie. And his coworker was getting dressed to come see him wrestle in front of the big crowd. And the inspiration of the coworker was that he remembered seeing Pele, in the World Cup finals, do the bicycle kick, upside down and backwards, score a goal. And for the thrill and sake of seeing something like that, it's worth going to a sporting event. And we wanted to see that. We wanted to see LeBron do his version of Pele. Michael Jordan had, in the finals against the Lakers in 1990, we saw him basically become miraculous. We've seen miracles from LeBron James, but not so much, epic in the finals where it's legendary. It's close, but not quite there. So with all of that just kind of cooking, and, with Blatt, there's all these articles on the sidelines, that LeBron was calling the plays, and he took over from Blatt, and Blatt was a yes man, and that was the end of it. And then Ari is saying now, will Blatt be back? What's my opinion? This is a long-winded answer to basically come to my premise. This is my own personal view. The title of today's show, as we're saying, is we need redemption or Geula solutions to exile or gullus problems. I'm going to go on record. The only way LeBron James will ever take his perch of greatness and of epic proportion is if he becomes the active player coach for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Period.
Okay, but the problem with that is then a Jew would lose his job, and David Blatt.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Yes, that's true. All right, so you're saying for LeBron James to reach his true potential, to get the Geula out of him, he has to become the coach?
Absolutely. They say, never before has when they compare the championship trophies, LeBron has 2, Michael has 6, and the great Bill Russell. How many you get? 10 or 11? I forget what it is. 10 or 11.
Russell had 11.
11. They say, but he was the coach of the Celtics. What could he do? What could anyone do? And that got me thinking. Why not LeBron? If you want to believe the articles that he took over the play calling of the Cavs, which I do believe, right? And it's nothing different from Peyton Manning audibling like crazy from under center in football. I mean, like LeBron explains, that's what athletes do, right? Phil Jackson makes you do that on the court when you play for the Lakers. He doesn't even coach with a team, Phil Jackson, at the time. He's been on record as saying they have to figure it out for themselves, work out their differences and problems on the floor. That's why he's the Zen master of basically just psychology, getting their minds, honed in on what they have to do. LeBron, when you follow his history from the high school team that was national champions because of his elated success as a kid, he's known for pulling teams together, making the most of little parts. When you look at LeBron's character, this is what he does. Even though he's physically intimidating, what I've noticed is he is an expert of diagnosing the floor and the flow of the game. I saw an interview with Kyrie Irving, his co-star, before he went down, that LeBron's able to anticipate the game of basketball, like a chess man, 5-6 moves ahead of everybody else. And as a kid, I grew up in Dayton, Ohio, Cincinnati Reds fan, and Pete Rose was the guy. And he was a player manager for the Reds. He got his 4,000 hits when I saw him as a kid. I mean, this was what I grew up as normal as a Reds fan. I don't see a problem with a player coach. And if anybody could do it, LeBron James would be able to run an amazing NBA caliber team. And here's one for you, Ari. You don't have to fire David Blatt. Make him the assistant coach.
Oh, come on. He's not taking that. Not this
I know
lifetime.
He won't take it, but he would be a great assistant coach, and LeBron would be a head coach. In a fictitious world, it would be an amazing team.
I'm shocked that you said that, but wow. He wouldn't be the assistant if Red Auerbach came out of the grave and built a time machine and said, "You want to be my assistant for Bill Russell Celtics?" He's not. David Blatt's not assistant to anybody. But okay, wow.
He was going to be assistant to Steve Kerr.
Yeah, well, he turned that down. So what happened there?
The point is, he would need somebody to lock down practice to run it when he's in the mode, right? But I really believe that again, this will never happen today. But if there was a psyche of a player coach, LeBron has that psyche, 100%.
Okay, and by the way, if you're just joining us, this actually is not the sports show. This is the Messiah Hour, but we're infusing the two because it was such a big story, the NBA Finals. There's the Jewish element of David Blatt and the owners and LeBron James' Jewish connections that we talked about. And one of the things we should note, I guess I want to ask you, you thought Bill Russell got to his potential. He got the geula, right? Is that your statement?
Not quite. I was just going to bring this up now, too.
Okay.
This just went through my brain as you were saying that.
All right, great minds think alike. That's why.
That's right. Remember the title of this class. This class radio show, right? Redemption Solutions for Gullah's Problems. I am a Kohen, correct?
As far as I know, your last name's Katz. It's most likely.
But I have a major problem in my life. I just am not serving in the temple right now. And nothing will ever change that short of redemption. Right? So we all have this kind of thing, like this unemployment spiritually. If like you were to ask my soul, "Hey, Dave, what's going on, buddy? What's wrong with you?" I'd say, "Well, Ari, I just want to offer cows up to God." Whatever it is, whatever Cohen you
I just
do
want
with the temple,
eat cows to offer up to God.
Eat cows and shuck cows and be involved in holy meat. Whatever, all right, if you were a Levite, you'd say, "I just want to play music to God, Ari." Whatever our Jewish souls are craving and yearning to do. And there's a lot of these exile imprisonments that can only be liberated with redemption. Call it the non-Jews and their rights in the land of Israel, Zagir Toshav, learning Torah. Until then, they're considered, even idolatrous, which isn't correct, but that's the stigma placed upon them. Right? The Cohen, once an esteemed state of Israel, he is reduced to just a regular yid. Women have certain liberties that have been taken away. Everybody, the mankind is in a fallen state. We are not achieving greatness today because the problems are so great of our exile. Only redemption can liberate those problems. Maybe 300 years ago, or even 70 years ago, 50 years ago, the Cohen issue in my family, me, other Kohanim, wouldn't have been so great. But today, it's exasperated to a point of a concern. Now, I just saw an article about dating on the internet today. About 71 reasons why it's easier to stay single. Every reason was social media based. Like, why should I go out if I have a computer screen? Why should I go out when I don't feel alone? When we were kids, you felt alone. Friday night, if you were, your pager wasn't going to do it in terms of making you feel not lonely. You needed social interaction. In today's world, we're so devoid of spirituality, we need the redemption. And I think it's boiled over into business and politics. I mean, look, our candidates are horrible. And what would make a great candidate is that if we would remove the exile mentality. Look at the difference between Bibi and Moshe Feiglin. Different worlds. Right? One caters to exile, one caters to redemption. Feiglin will never become anything of anything until we move towards the redemption. Because his entire philosophy is on that. Every wisdom has, let's say, a messianic conclusion, or a prophetic greatness to it, or profound greatness. And we're stunted until we enter that next level. Who's to say that basketball doesn't suffer the same type of consequences? Which, by the way, I think that could be also why Golden State won. I thought a lot about this the last week or two. Have you ever seen a team give more liberty to bombs away than Steve Kerr has given to the Golden State Warriors?
Well, not just that. Those type of teams usually don't win championships either because they usually get cold and start missing their shots.
That's it. So I think we saw, the more I got into Steph Curry's profile, I realized the better team won. Because they were living redemption basketball. I'm serious. I mean, never before has someone dribbled behind their back at like 3 or 4 feet behind the three-point line and fired away, and the coach says, yeah, normal, no problem. No one ever did that.
Yeah, usually those guys get benched.
That's it. And these guys were told, just keep doing it. Steve Kerr is a shtickle enlightened guy in terms of basketball, but look who his mentors were. Right? He played alongside Michael Jordan. His coach was Phil Jackson.
And Greg Popovich.
Let's never forget him. And remember what we saw mid-season with Klay Thompson. How many points was it? 37?
In one quarter.
In one quarter. Steve Kerr said even Michael Jordan never did that. Whatever it's worth, these guys were playing inspired, enlightened basketball. And I'll prove it with wisdom. Here we go. Steve Kerr told Steph Curry. I saw this in another interview. So I like watching the post-championship interviews. And he said, Coach said like this, they got one guy, the Cavs. And he's amazing, and he's doing epic stuff, and he's preventing us from winning. He said, just play basketball. It is physically impossible that they can keep a tempo more than 6 games. It is not humanly possible that they can continue to play at this pace. They will break down. And what happened? It happened. Simple wisdom. Right? So Steve Kerr was not playing X's and O's. He was playing a game of wisdom. And we saw that with their whole team. It was a wise team. Right? That team was playing with wisdom. LeBron James would only be able to counter that with wisdom. His wisdom is, we saw, when he goes primal, that's when he's at an epic level of greatness. He was caged in because he was playing to the confines of social norms of basketball. The Warriors threw those out. The Cavs would have to throw them out as well, but that means LeBron being basically the captain of the whole team. And no one in today's world is prepared to give that gift to a player. And because of that, he lost. That's my personal opinion.
Again, this is the Messiah Hour, not the sports show here on Israel Sports and News Radio. We're speaking with Rabbi David Katz from Spot, co-author of the book World of the Gear, talking about the NBA Finals. So what then happens from here? If he's not going to get what he needs to get to reach this Geula status, then what happens?
We all suffer, right? The non-Jews who have thrown off idolatry, they're still called idolaters. The Kohen who strives to be a Kohen spiritually is treated like a regular Jew. Women who want, Torah liberty are looked down upon. Right? We're in a different era. Look, people in our generation want jobs, but the 70-year-olds won't let go. Now, before the baby boomers, these guys would have retired. Everyone's stuck. It's no one's fault or to point fingers. The world is in a different frame of mind. Some people, let's say, are enlightened enough to break out. Steve Kerr apparently was one of those guys. And it's a great story. It is a truly great story. And, it's interesting, too. They all accredited God and not Yeshu. I know maybe there are obviously intentions, but they were openly praising God in this way. And something about it didn't feel like overt Yeshu. Whereas before it's kind of treif in the way the acknowledgement or no acknowledgement at all. There was just a certain type of light coming out of Golden State. And with LeBron, I don't think this is any particular fault of him. I think he's so great that to be great, he would have to be epic of the most epic, and that is, as they say on SportsCenter, right, a la Bill Russell. He would have to break the clippers of exile and do something we've never, ever seen before, even to trump and one-up the Golden State Warriors. It's a shame that these things won't happen. I was also watching wrestling. It was the World Team Trials last weekend. After Shabbos, they were having live streaming. And a guy from my back home was trying to make the team. And again, I'm seeing the same problems. The unorthodox style, not in terms of Judaism, but unorthodoxy is really frowned upon in the sports world. And I think that the creativity the players would demand and being unorthodox simply won't fly. There's too much money involved. No one is going to sign over $1 billion franchise to LeBron James. Will never happen. Which begs the question, who allowed Steve Kerr to let this happen with his team? That's also, like you said, a huge risk. Huge risk. They took the risk, and it paid off. But this is a classic, case of what succeeds and what doesn't. Those that take risks succeed. Those that don't lose. Unfortunately, for LeBron to succeed, a lot of people would have to get on board. The last people that would do that would be the Jews. Right? They are not going to risk that in that way. And with that, he suffers. He chose a Jewish camp. He suffers a Jewish fate. We are in exile. He's in exile. It's that simple.
So, how you discussed that he went with or saw Rabbi Pinto, this shady Kabbalistic character. Was there something in LeBron that he wanted to reach this Geula point and he took maybe an inappropriate way, but something inside, because that was a pretty strange thing to do. Usually you don't hear of athletes meeting with rabbis for any reason, and this was a pretty big rabbi, although shady as he may be, still well known. So what drove LeBron to do that?
For whatever it's worth, maybe is he like a closet ger? Not with intention, but in his soul. Something about LeBron allows him to understand what holiness is. We know that, right? He is gravitating towards Jews, and not so much the bad stuff like shady deals with agents. It's not that. Like you said, it's the shady Kabbalah and Pinto. Madonna's dying for something holy, and she's stuck in the Kabbalah Center. There's a lot of non-Jews out there who are looking for the truth, and they get stuck and wrapped up in a lesser version of what they're looking for. Could LeBron James have found the truth? Again, a famous story, maybe you've heard about it, Ari. Amari Stoudemire, he came close, right? A friend of mine was his personal rabbi. It's fine. I don't know if you followed that whole story, but Amari Stoudemire he thinks he's Jewish. I guess his mother was Jewish. So it can be done. A lot of people are trying to get to Amari Stoudemire for not personal gain, but to promote the Baruch Hashem mentality. Again, imagine if someone could get through to LeBron and get him to say Baruch Hashem. Pinto should have done that. He didn't do it. But if it were to happen, I thought about this also. You can see a potential greatness, or you can see him break down. He might go put a yarmulke on and go sit in Bnei Brak. Seriously, if he were to find God, he might say, sorry, folks, basketball's not for me. I have a higher calling. So it's a big wild card. Big wild card. But whatever it's worth, he was searching. He found something. He found a comfort zone with Jews. Jews obviously love him. He brought a great economy back to Cleveland. But at the end of the day, his liberation, he has a higher bailout than maybe anybody else in history. He needs totally free to be him. And you see, have you ever seen a more scrutinized superstar than LeBron James? He does nothing but impress in a rightful way, and we still dog the guy. Right? Kobe was a rapist, and they were like, yeah, Kobe's great.
Allegedly. I just want to get sued.
Allegedly. And he doesn't have the killer instinct like Steph Curry showed. But so we all have our issues with LeBron. But we all see how he can do it. He can break out and have this amazing, epic energy, but he's caged in. And he's caged in by the social norms of how the world works in exile. Right? We don't allow Bill Russell today. We don't allow Jews to be light to nations today. We don't allow Torah precepts in exile today that have been out of style for 1,000 years, such as marrying more than one wife. Not that I'm an advocate of that. But there's a lot of things that people would like to see come back. Not eating the kidneys, people like to see that go to the wayside. Just liberty, taking the shackles off, taking back the Temple Mount, being a Jew, right? Proclaiming God is great, Baruch Hashem, consciousness throughout the world. These are things that we want to take back, but society says no. Right? You can't even pray on the Temple Mount. So in a very kind of mundane little world, yeah, LeBron James could be fantastic if the shackles will be taken off. But they're not going to be. You'd have to invent a new game called, another type of basketball for that to happen. Also in football, we're seeing things change not the way they were. And certain things will never be the same. And it's unfortunate, because that really shows you the sheker of this world. I mean, so many things that you learn about how sports work. It's like in wrestling, they change the rules on a dime. Well, what is that? There's no true sport, contingent by rules. And I think for me personally, that's why I flaked out of sports towards the end of my high school, because the competition part was bogus. The beauty of the sport was imprisoned by a bogus set of rules and regulations that make it not worth playing. That's how I felt. And I think we're not witnessing greatness because of the social construct placed not only on basketball or sports, but really on everything that we experience as gullus or exile consciousness in our lives as we trek forwards towards an open, liberal redemption.
Again, this is the Messiah Hour here on IsraelSportsandNewsRadio.com. My guest is Rabbi David Katz, co-author of the book The World of the Ger. We're talking about how Galut affects the sports world. So let's say Mashiach comes tomorrow, the Cavs play next season, he's on the team. What would happen?
Know thyself. Assuming I'm right. would LeBron be then willing and able to accept this of himself? John Smith was a six-time world champion wrestler out of Oklahoma State in either late 80s, early 90s. He won his first world championship. He said the hardest thing he ever had to do was the morning he woke up, he had to look in the mirror and say, John, you are the greatest wrestler on planet Earth. Not out of ego, reality. God gave him a gift, and that was the reality. So, another question people have is, can you handle your own greatness? I think Michael Jordan did. That's why he was superb. And so did Dennis Rodman and Phil Jackson and Steve Kerr. I don't know about Scottie Pippen. That's my own personal thing. But a lot of those guys did. They became eternally great. Becoming great that's a personal thing. We've seen Mike Tyson could have. He crumbled at the prospect of becoming great. Certain people have become, eternally great. Others haven't. Some cheated and they appeared great. Did Tom Brady cheat? If we look back in history, did Babe Ruth cheat?
No, well, Tom Brady cheated.
Bob Kraft is a Jew.
Yeah, well, it doesn't mean he didn't do the wrong thing by not yelling at someone or trading someone or getting someone fired, but Brady's been suspended for 4 games. Anyways, I'll leave that alone for now.
But, the sports world's a funny world, You never know who really earned it, who cheated, were the refs tipped off. I mean, it's so easy to affect a game. You and I talked about that, Ari, before the series started. As I'm watching wrestling from a 37-year-old man perspective, as a fan now, just appreciating the sport, I'm seeing just how bogus it is. A guy has, let's say, a risky move that could be potentially dangerous. The ref is calling it. That guy's he's done. He just chopped off one of his arms. So this world is the world of Sheker, and we are subjected to the Sitra Achra in this world. So in the end, who was great? Who didn't live up to expectations? All these things. Mazel's a big part of it, if not entirely. To put, make David Robinson get hurt so that Tim Duncan would be drafted. Then you have the don't say that word, right? Twin Towers of the two big men of San Antonio that allows a dynasty for the next 15 plus years to commence. And a great coach in place. What makes the bonding happen? Why did the Rolling Stones get together? These guys of epic greatness. They found each other. They knew each other. Whereas other bands are one-hit wonders and fall apart. What is success? What makes success go? Who brings it all together? Who or what makes them realize their greatness? From failure comes success. Let's say drug usage in rock and roll can make the bands then eventually come together. Whereas for Guns N' Roses, that kills them and they fall apart. Steroid usage. We thought Barry Bonds was great. Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. Would he have been great if he wouldn't have used steroids? Which was also a legend, right, Ari?
Yeah.
So it's a fantastic world of what ifs, demonology, even Illuminati, grace of God, angels. It's a sports world is a hodgepodge of every rogue type of spirituality that exists. Some kosher, some not kosher. Right when we think it's kosher, they turn out to be treif and just the other way around. So it's interesting to follow it and to really see, in hindsight, foresight, and in the present moment, what's going on, who's who. At this moment, Steph Curry looks like a great, guy. He really earned it. Well, we thought that about Kobe Bryant in the beginning. So in the end, God is the true judge. We can only perceive. These guys all have their tests from God. We're armchair quarterbacks at this point, obviously. That goes without saying. But I think we all have a right to our opinion when it comes to this kind of stuff. If I asked LeBron, he'd say, "You don't know what you're talking about," probably. All things equal, that's how I see it.
All right, last question I have for you. What was interesting is you take a look at David Blatt, as a Jew, as someone living in Israel, do we root for him or to do well in the NBA, or do we root for him not to do well so then he comes back to Israel and is able to do things here? And even the Shabbat observance, because you look at Game 6. Game 6 is on a Tuesday. If you're rooting for him to win Game 6, so then Game 7 is on a Friday night, he would have had to work on Friday night. So from that perspective, how do you work that out?
God is a true judge. Who knows? Could God have brought, not could God have brought, but would have, should God wish to make a miracle, he would have been in position to do so. Again, one big Baruch Hashem would go a long way. One big Chilul Hashem goes an even bigger way. So, in the end, God runs the world. He moves the pieces. Could have been, should have been, would have been. It just seems to me that the theme that I'm seeing from my window of the universe is that we're caged in, we want redemption, Mashiach's got to come, and everybody's personal greatness is being held for ransom until that happens. That's how I see it. I might be wrong. Maybe LeBron's issues is that he wishes he was a better math scholar. I don't know. Whatever it is, it just seems to me that if he's a true basketball player, which I believe him to be, and truly great, which I believe him to be, and taking our, what went wrong for the Cavs theory, if that really is the way to go, then I stand by my decision that's kind of what LeBron said, isn't it? I stand by my decision that he would have to become the ultimate player coach, monster, Frankenstein going loose on the floor, running the show, doing everything. Much like what Bill Parcells wanted to do when he got back into coaching, right? He wanted to be the GM. He wanted to be the this. That's where we seem to be. The guys that are given that luxury fail, and the guys that are denied it, I think, would actually prevail. And I think LeBron would be in a great position to prevail. And I wish we can see a redeemed society where people can be in better position to prevail. I mean, I know in football, Bob Kraft does an amazing job of this too, with Belichick and Brady. I think those guys have total liberty to do like what Steph Curry did with Steve Kerr. And they're in position to succeed.
Well, he also allows them to cheat. I think that's really his secret.
That's also true.
And he looks the other way. I don't know what you're talking about.
That's what I'm saying. It comes either way. You pay for these things, exploitations. In the end, who knows? It's all storyline, I guess, when you bring it from that perspective. I mean, who is it? Michael Jordan cheated. He pushed off, grabbed clothes. So in the end, learn Torah, fear God, keep his mitzvahs.
Well said. By the way, LeBron might want to be a math scholar to count up all the money he has. There's, that might be a reason for that, but you never know. You can always have a reason for something. Again, this has been another episode of the Messiah Hour here on IsraelSportsNewsRadio.com. If you'd like to make a donation, you can do so through PayPal. That's IsraelSportsRadio@yahoo.com. Again, IsraelSportsRadio@yahoo.com. My guest has been Rabbi David Katz, co-author of the book, The World of the Ger. His websites are gergear.com, where you can get the copy of the book, and also Sobazal.com, where you can find out more about your Jewish name. Rabbi, thank you for the time today. Great job as always.
Thanks for having me back, Ari. It's a pleasure as always.
Indeed. This has been the Messiah Hour here on IsraelSportsAndNewsRadio.com. Thank you for joining us. Have a great day out there. We'll be in touch soon. Be well.